I think my juices flow all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know as much as I know.
Right now, we've been able to stuff the stuff.
The curse is broken. NC State fans, finally. Finally.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving.
I mean, that's a triple play.
The Wolfpack ain't for soft. It ain't for soft people.
Another week of Pack Therapy. More officiating talk. More talk about referees and endgame calls. Scott Wood, Wolfpack Great, joining me here this week. Of course, as we come to the close of the college basketball season. We're gearing up for the ACC tournament. NC State with 4 games left. But let's talk a little bit about the trip to Syracuse, Scott, because I don't think it's a bad loss Tuesday night up at the Dome. They lose 75-72. Syracuse is a top 100 team in the net, so it's a quad 2 game. They have been competitive in ACC play. They have a winning record in ACC play. So this isn't a quote-unquote bad loss. But I do want to start with the officiating. You know, we've had conversations already this season about the officials and more of a player's kind of point of view about how you said, you know, none of them are good. So you kind of have to go into the game. You got to understand that. You do have to kind of play through it a little bit. But I do want to talk a little bit about the block charge concept and how it's not in the NBA game. They've been able to take it out of the NBA game, but yet here we are ostensibly deciding games deciding the final minute in a close game where you're seeing DJ Burns foul out due to a Jesse Edwards, 6'10", 230 pounds, flop and fall to the ground as if, you know, there was an assassination attempt on his life. It just doesn't feel like basketball to me. Where do you kind of stand on the block charge? I suspect some of your Indiana high school teams probably were gritty, gutty white guys who had to get some blocks and charges in there in order to.
I want to be very clear on one thing. We did not have many white guys.
Okay, so you didn't have the gritty, gutty Hoosiers.
And I would also tell you, I was raised by someone that told me, just go block the shot because I don't want to leave it up to an official calling a charge or block. So I was raised not to take a charge.
Perfect.
With that being said, you know, even Terquavion is a perfect example. How many charges has he taken this year?
I couldn't tell you.
Quite a few.
Okay.
But what he does is as soon as someone posts him up, he anticipates the first bump and he flops.
Embellishes it.
He's in great position. He anticipates it. And yet teams don't read it on the scouting report and officials give it to him every single time. You know, it's just one of those things that people are starting to do. They're going to see DJ to where he uses his body to create space. And I think you're going to start to see more of these guys flop. Was it a charge or more of a flop? It was 100% more of a flop. And then I think the one with Casey as well, I think Casey's was not so much a block or charge. It was more so the officiating being human and understanding he just got smacked in the face.
Yeah.
So it's their idea of a makeup call, which again, I've told you before, you got to anticipate all officials are bad officials. You have to also assume that some officials are worse than other officials.
Did you think when you were playing? Yeah. Did you think when you were playing that certain officials were out to get you, or Rich, or any of your teammates, or NC State?
100%. But it also, I think it goes.
Now, is that being paranoid or
no? So, like another example is I was sitting behind the bench, trying to think what game it was. I mean, it's pretty recent, within the last 4 or 5 games. Terquavion was visibly upset with the officials and was giving it to him. And the official literally looked at him and said, "Stop acting. We know who you are. Stop doing this." We come down 2 possessions later, and it was a very ticky-tack, probably not a foul. They called it on Terquavion. They deliberately sent him a message. So, you know, again, a lot of it comes down to, you know, what am I doing to push this official? Because you can get under their skin. You know, Casey's another one. Earlier in that game, you know, he kind of gets a little bit crazy, does some of this motion towards an official, and then he gets a couple ticky tack ones. I mean, it's just
So they remember the histrionics.
100%.
Okay.
And they do not like that. That's one of the things that I was bad at it, but I tried to be understanding of it. Is as soon as you try to show up a official on national television, they don't take it well, and they are going to be remembering that. 100%.
And that's where the human element is more so, do you think, than being in a building and being influenced by either the crowd or a coach, a Hall of Fame coach?
Yeah, and I think that also, I mean, it plays into it. I mean, it's just the hard part and the reality of it is we got to remember these officials are human. I guarantee you some of these officials grew up being a Carolina fan or grew up being a Virginia Tech fan. That is the reality of it. They are human beings that just so happen to be in a profession that you have to take out the human element, which is impossible to do. But again, there are going to be bad calls made. They're also going to make really, really good calls. And we don't ever talk about the really, really good calls.
I was just saying they probably get 90 to 95% of the calls right.
Yeah, they're not bad. And I would sit here and tell you after watching some replays of our game, unfortunately, again, the reality of it is I'm human. I'm a State fan.
Sure.
There were some really bad calls and questionable calls at the end of the game. We can't change it. And the hard part is, as a coach, you kind of see, I think Kevin is really good at this, trying to stay, level-headed and tell the guys, hey, next play, don't worry about the last one. But it does mount up on a player, and it really does affect your game after a while.
I thought the sequence of the calls, Burns fouls out. It's a 1-point game. He was in some foul trouble. He comes in, there's 48 seconds left. Fouls out in a 1-point game when he had just gotten back in the game and gotten a basket and one, and you're like, oh, well, here it goes again. State's going to pull this thing out. And then the call on the other end on EB, I can live or I can take it or leave it. I think probably one thing on that one structurally, AJ Desai under the basket. He didn't make the call. Bert Smith comes in from the outside, makes a call. I mean, there's some structural things there that I know coaches can get into from time to time where they look at that and go, I can live if you make the call, if the right guy makes the call, but I can't really live with, an official kind of overstepping in their own domain there. So there's some of that. I think so too. I think it's important to try to focus when you have a situation like that. I'll go back to the first thing I said. That's not a bad loss for State. I don't think Syracuse is a bad team. They're not a great team. This isn't, Billy Owens and Ronnie Cycli and Sherman Douglas, but they're not a bad team, particularly at home. That might be, going back to our previous episode, maybe you see them again in Greensboro. I didn't think they were bad against the zone, but I thought they had some spells where it would have helped to have DJ on the floor more. But one thing I really want to take away from that game, Scott, is the return of Jack Clark and how that could really be a boost for NC State. You look at NC State, and we would struggle. You had a lot of optimism before the season started. I thought they could be an NCAA tournament team this year. I liked how they remolded the roster. Jarkel Joyner with a triple-double, by the way. One of the quietest triple-doubles in NC State history, that's for sure.
And the most humble one. I mean, he played it to, hey, we got to play better. We had a loss. Didn't care about the numbers, just cares about the wins. That's what you want in a leader.
Yeah, the last time NC State had a triple-double, I'm pretty sure it was Dennis Smith Jr. against Syracuse, where he had to hunt the last 3 rebounds, and it was not cool.
Did Darion I feel like Darion had one.
Oh, you might be right. Maybe Darion had one last year. But anyway, I thought, Jarkel just quietly going about his business as usual. But you look at Jack and what he might mean to this team. Because I thought at the start of Jack's a transfer, comes in, played at LaSalle, played at a mid-major conference at a lower level. And I thought he had done a lot in the preseason, the trip to the Bahamas. The word was he shot really well from the 3-point line. And I thought maybe the year started and he thought he had to be like this Scott Wood, right? He had to be this 3-point specialist. And his shot was off and he struggled a little bit. And then he was kind of sort of finding his way in ACC play, I thought. He was trying to play that stretch 4 and has the groin injury, hernia injury against Clemson. And you're going, oh, we might not see Jack Clark the rest of the year. Finally comes back, plays some minutes against BC, But 31 minutes on Tuesday, Scott. 15 points, 9 boards, banging in there against the zone, and 2 steals. I thought he was good on defense. I feel like the number one positive from that game, crazy as it sounds, because Jarkel had a triple double, is Jack Clark and his return and what he could possibly mean to this team going down the stretch.
Yeah, and I think, we can't obviously forget about, what Greg and what Ernest did during that time. And I think there's
Yeah.
still going to be a big part of it going forward.
No
I
doubt.
think Jack just brings a different element from an offensive standpoint as well as a defensive standpoint. I think he rebounds the ball better than probably both Greg. I think Greg attacks the ball really well, and I think Ernest does really well as well. But I think Jack rebounds really well. And we're going to sound like a broken record, and I've said it 100 times since we've been on here. If you're not going to shoot the ball well, what can you bring me? And I think Jack brings you the ability to switch, almost 1 through 5, and the ability to rebound really, really well. He's one of the best rebounders on the team. Even in the preseason, in the beginning until he got hurt, he's one of the best rebounders on the team. And I think that kind of frees up DJ and some other guys to focus on, okay, all I got to do is box out my guy. I've got Jack coming in here to clean it up. But I also think from the offensive standpoint, you've seen so many teams start to double DJ. So what Greg and Ernest are doing is they're back cutting. And even though Jack has not shot the ball particularly well and has not had good numbers, there's still a threat that he can shoot it.
Yep.
So now
That's
they have
also
to respect it.
Yeah, Syracuse is also horses for courses, because not to diminish, I do think Greg Gant and Ernest Ross, they've already proven, if you go to the Georgia Tech game, Ernest Ross with the Miami game, they've already proven they can help you win ACC games.
Yep.
So their value is now known. I think the bonus here is now having Jack back. And okay, maybe you're in a situation, in a matchup situation. Syracuse with their funky zone. Georgia Tech likes to play, multiple zones. Carolina, where you go over there, you lose Terquavion, DJ's in foul trouble, and we're going to talk about the Tar Heels here in a minute, but those are the kind of matchups where you need more scoring options. And I think if Jack can kind of just hone in on that type of role, where it's not the beginning of the year, where if he feels like he's got to hit 28 threes to justify his existence, so that's good. But you mentioned the rebounding, so that's there. I think the defense is there too. So, to me, this helps NC State make NC State the best version of what they can be. And that's going to be important here because there's 4 regular season games left, Scott. And I don't know what your opinion is of their most direct path to the tournament at this point. I think it's to go 2-2 over the next 4 games. And that's not going to be easy because it's Carolina, Wake, Clemp, and Duke.
Yeah.
I think they go 2-2, and then they win a game in Greensboro. And I think they're safely in the field. What do you think?
Yeah, and I said that back to before the Boston College game. They've got a tough stretch, and it's very easy that they're playing some good teams and they don't get the wins that they need. I think they just need to take it one game at a time. I think obviously 2-2 would be ideal with the remaining schedule, and obviously get as many as you can in the tournament. Obviously I think they're in a comfortable spot right now, but you drop one coming up, you drop another one, and it starts to get really uncomfortable really quick. And now the pressure's back on the team, and they're going to start feeling it to play well. And that's something we don't want, because that's, as a player, it's really hard to turn that off.
I think in particular, Scott, these final 4 games, it's not just can you go 2-2. You're competing now with Wake. You're competing with Carolina.
Yeah.
You're competing with Clemson. And even Duke. I don't think Duke's a lock. I mean, they're probably going to make the tournament, but I don't think they're in a position to lose out. When you say I'm a lock to make the tournament, in my world, that means you can lose out in the tournament and you'll still make the tournament. So to me, I look at this and I go, you're actually now on the bubble with Carolina. You're on the bubble with Wake Forest. You're on the bubble with Clemson. And when you don't have the win over Carolina, you don't have the win over Clemson, you don't want to go before the committee and have that team have that sweep over you and the committee be like, well, we need to consider this. So don't misinterpret what I'm saying about where I think NC State is. I just think you don't want to leave anything to chance.
I agree.
The selection Sunday.
I agree.
And this isn't landmines. I thought they did a really good job. Boston College, Florida State, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech. They took care of business when they needed to take care of business. I mean, I'll say it again because I feel like it's something that most people don't pay attention to college basketball until the tournament. And I feel like this is going to be a team that shows up on the board and they're going to be in the tournament And it's going to be like, well, same old NC State. And, maybe they do this, but they'll have their, hearts broken. And this group, it just feels like they just don't care about anything.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way. They just play. Like, they're a pleasure. Even in that game, I thought the Syracuse game was a snapshot of the season in some ways. They get behind, they're trailing. And you probably watching the game with some friends, and they're groaning, oh, here we go. And they just kept plugging along.
Yeah.
They were making shots, plugging along, kept playing, kept their head down. And honestly, I find it refreshing because I just can't remember a state group like this
No,
that just kind of ignores everything and genuinely seems to enjoy each other too, Scott.
and I think that's the biggest part is that somebody can sit on the bench and really care about someone that plays the same position as them and have that success. As a player, that's one of the hardest things to do is to go to war every single day at practice, trying to earn your minutes. And while you're on the bench, for me, my first 2 years, perfect example. CJ Williams. I came in, started as a freshman. He came off the bench and he was a sophomore. Didn't get a lot of minutes. But there was nobody that wanted more success for me than CJ Williams. And then he gets rewarded on the back end, hangs in there at NC State, doesn't take the easy way out and transfers, continues to develop, and has a great junior and senior year. It's just one of those things that it's really hard to do. And I feel like this is a group that genuinely cares about the success of everybody else, even if they're not playing well. They have one goal in mind, and that's to win a game. And those are the best and most dangerous teams. And especially in today's game, that's hard to find.
Yeah. Well, especially with this roster, they haven't been together. There's no continuity there. So, Kevin's done a really good job getting these personalities and these guys to mesh together and really care for each other. That part has been very noticeable as the season has gone along. Now, coming off this loss, they get Carolina at home on Sunday. It's a busy weekend this week in the Triangle with the Canes and the outdoor game over at Carter Finley Stadium. There's a lot of hoopla around that game. There's a lot of hoopla around the State Carolina game, of course. Carolina's lost 4 of 5. They did win the game in Chapel Hill 80-69 in a game where they took a lot of free throws. They also made a lot of free throws. And I want to go back to your pregame thought against Carolina, the first game, which was January 21st. And you had said on this podcast, NC State needs to figure out a way to defend Armando Bacot. And if he can get his, then Carolina's going to win the game. And we talked, you specifically said Kevin doesn't like to double, but might be a good idea. So I'm wondering, after seeing Bacot have the success that he did in the first game, even with the foul trouble, he was 7 of 7 from the free throw line. That's fairly large. He had 23 points, 8 of 13 from the floor. He had 12 boards too. He was outstanding in the game. I mean, there's no way around that. But after watching Pitt have some success with the double, and then I thought Miami really kind of bothered Bacot too in that game. I'm wondering, also, when you look at some of the players who have bothered Bacot, it's usually length.
Yeah.
So it's almost like maybe you could put, when EB's in the game, maybe you could let him go one-on-one with them. That won't be for long stretches. But I do think with DJ, he's got size, but he doesn't have length.
Yeah.
So I wonder if the play isn't when DJ's on the floor to double or to do more doubling than Kevin is comfortable with Bacot.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's not so much either, if DJ can guard him or this and that. It's more so to do it to protect DJ. You got to get DJ to the second half. If we want to play one-on-one and let them bang each other, that's fine. But I want him to do it when he has 0 fouls and we don't have to take him off the court. Because if I'm being quite frank, Armando is not guarding DJ at the other end either. So, I mean, we just got to make the decision that, hey, or tell him straight up, look, if we give Armando 12 in the first half, do it without fouling.
Right.
Which is very hard as a competitor to do. I've also seen Coach Keese this year, they put Greg on a big. I forget which game it was. They had Greg on the big to start, and they moved, DJ off the ball so that he didn't have to bang as much. and then they kind of just digged from the guards to make them second guess. I mean, I think DJ can. I think DJ can guard him. I think Eby can guard him. I think he's going to get easy buckets if he's alone, but it's more so to not let him get in foul trouble, because we saw what impact he has on the offensive end when he doesn't have fouls.
I look at this game too, and obviously there was such an unusual second half once Terquavion went down. Kevin has said that Terquavion said that he had numbness in his neck. That was the reason for all of the attention that he rightfully got, medical attention. They had to go through all the precautions. Then that night, then in the post game, Armando Bacot had the glasses, taking a shot back at Terquavion. That they seemed to be friendly, so I didn't take it as like some sort of spiteful thing, but more of kind of engaging in the rivalry.
Yeah.
But he didn't know at that point that Terquavion was okay. I'm kind of curious, as a competitor, you see that from the last game, you mark that one mentally and save it, or just move it along, business as usual? This is a big game. It's going to be a sold out crowd. That's all you need.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, it's in the back of your mind. So it's all kind of the newspaper clippings. It's the coaches that didn't recruit you as hard. It's the kids that went to a school that you were ranked a little bit higher than you were. And it's, the kid mocking you in the press game after they just beat you. It's all fuel for the fire. And I would highly, highly expect, NC State to come out guns blazing, really putting the pressure on them. I also feel like you're probably going to see the best crowd at PNC that you've seen in a while. So without a doubt, as a player, you put it in your locker, the picture of him in the sunglasses, and like, all right, come Sunday, we're going to lace up and we're going to go at it, without a doubt.
Your one of your shining moments against UNC was your last year. You get them at home, and you guys you played really, really well.
Yeah.
My question for you, though, is do you still have that ghost red jersey?
I actually took a picture and sent it to Chris Bullard the other day because he wanted it. It's actually, I got all my jerseys.
Yes.
But I have 3 that I have out and about that I want to frame at some point. One was my Jimmy V in the Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
I have an all red jersey, which was from that game.
Yeah.
And then I actually have the all black jerseys that we played Duke with, and we're up 20.
Yeah, I was gonna say burn that one. What are you doing?
So I have it there. Every once in a while I'm trying to grab some clothes out of there, and I just look at it, and it's one of my few good memories that I have playing Carolina. So I gotta cherish it as much as I can.
91-83 at 12 points in that game. Zoe was really, really good in that game. 20 points, 11 dimes. That's a Carolina team that got better as the year went along, and then, of course, the bones of it would end up in the NCAA championship game 3 years later. Marcus Page, notably on that side, just the kind of Bryce Johnson, just a little bit of a different type of Carolina team. They were younger, a little bit in transition. We've talked a little bit about this Carolina team before the first meeting, but I think it's fairly clear now because Hubert Davis, after the Wake Forest, they've lost 4 or 5. So after the Wake Forest loss, he had them practice in vests as like symbolic of this is the weight you've been carrying around from the expectations from last year. It's like, all right, now you just got to go be free and go play. I do wonder if it's possible to shed some of that baggage. Did you ever feel like in that 13 season that you guys were free from those preseason expectations when you're top 10 and went to the Sweet 16 the year before, you add 3 McDonald's All-Americans?
Yeah, and I mean, the crazy part is when you're playing, you really don't think about it. But when you're not in the gym working on your game or in a game, it's just one of those things where it's like, dude, our talent is just so much better than what we are, and it's just kind of pressure too on your chest because everybody knows, okay, this is the team that's supposed to get NC State their first ACC championship. This is the team that's supposed to take NC State back to where they're supposed to be. And, you just don't figure it out. And it's the same thing with, them. I think it's obviously a little bit more different because they went all the way there. They brought everybody out in their core. So I don't know if theirs is necessarily as much the pressure, but it's just trying to figure it all out. And it is. I mean, it weighs on you. Now, obviously, when that ball goes in the air, I'm not thinking about it by
Right.
any means. Now, I feel like if I felt like the crowd was grunting and moaning, you feel that too. But in that year, I don't think we really got that. I think they were
No,
still there
that
in
was
my eyes. But I think that's part of it too. I haven't been to many Carolina games. I'm sure they can feel it in the crowd at times where it's like, oh gosh, they're going to lose another one, 4 out of 5. I mean,
Yeah.
is this really Carolina basketball? So,
especially after you think you might have solved something in the Clemson win, and that was their best win of the year. I mean, technically State is, but the 91-71 performance
I
against
said it,
Clemson.
I still think it's a good Carolina team. What it is, whether it's the egos in play trying to all get theirs, I don't know. It is a little bit of a weird situation because I think they, talent wise and skill wise, bring everything back. But I also know at the end of the year they just got really hot. Maybe it was just that streak that pushed them on, and we kind of not a fluke by any means, but they just got hot at the right time.
Before we go, Ken Palm has this as a 77-74 NC State win. You got a prediction for me?
That sounds pretty good to me, honestly. I do think State wins this one. Again, I think a lot of it comes down to Bacota. I said it before. I think it was 18 last game. If he gets over 20, I think it's going to be awfully hard to win. But I also think he can probably get 20 if DJ can play good minutes and not get in foul trouble early. So if they can put DJ in when he wants to go in and when he needs to go in, I think NC State can roll with this. But if he gets in even a little bit of foul trouble, it's going to be tough sledding for State. But I think Jack Clark coming back helps too, because they double team now. He's got, somebody he can kick it to.
Let me see if Casey Morsell how about we give it the Casey Morsell rule of 3? How would you like that? You want me to apply it to him?
You can
After
do
all
that.
those years of not being you hated it?
Let's not do it before this game because I know Roy specifically had on his scouting report, I've played summer league with Kendall and was on the first summer league with Reggie, and to this day they're like, dude, our scouting report was point blank clear. Don't let the white kid make more than 3 threes. That's all they cared about. So I thank you for my struggles against Carolina because you made up some piece of statistic about how good State was when I make X amount of threes. So that's probably partially the reason we weren't very good against them.
All right. It's all my fault. I'll take it. It's fine. Scott Wood, you can catch us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, the Googles, you name it. You can watch all of our episodes on our YouTube page, 99.9 The Fan, or you can check out WRLSportsFan.com. Scott, I will see you at PNC Sunday, and we'll be back again next week for another edition of Pack Therapy.